15th, 2020. And please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start off with a roll call of board members. Peter?
And you may be muted because I muted everyone during the pledge, so
Oops.
please unmute yourself.
Here.
All right. Ben? Oh, I see you, Ben.
Then you have to
Still
unmute.
Still muted. Nicole?
I'm here.
Yep, got you. And I know Rocco's out unless he joined. Don't think so. Bob?
Here.
And Joan?
Here.
See you as well. Great. All right, we have 6 members present tonight. I have to read that tonight's meeting has been convened in accordance with the Governor's March 13th, 2020 Executive Order 202.1, which suspends certain provisions of the Open Meetings Law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view and participate in tonight's meeting by computer, smartphone, or telephone, and to view the meeting on the usual cable television channels. The recording of the meeting will be posted to the town website, and a written transcript of the meeting will be prepared and provided at a later date. There's been a roll call of board members, and there's a quorum present for this meeting. I have also confirmed with the secretary that this meeting has been duly noticed. We have fulfilled our legal notice requirements by posting a copy of the notice at the meeting, on the town's webpage and on the doors of town hall, as the town's bulletin board is within the building and not presently available to the public. We have emailed a copy of the notice to the media, and we have confirmation that the legal notices for the public hearings have been properly published. First up on the agenda is Hudson Heritage for preliminary and final major subdivision hearing. Marty, are you on, or who's on for Hudson Heritage tonight? Oh, not hearing you, Marty.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, Marty. Well, I
see you, but
yeah, it doesn't show that you're muted. It doesn't show that you have a microphone right now, so I'm wondering if...
no, something's wrong. Still not hearing you.
It's connected to audio.
Okay, it's
All right.
working on it. The problems of doing this phone.
And I see that John here is on there.
Okay, great.
All right, I'm
Lisa,
going
Lisa, I
to
see as well.
mute Peters.
You tried. Okay, now we see a microphone.
Can you
Now,
can
there
you
we go.
hear me
There
now?
we go.
Now we hear
We
you.
got you, Marty. Thanks.
Okay, I apologize. Marty Berger for EFG Sabre Heritage SC LLC. Thank you for listening to our presentation this evening. We have previously received the final subdivision plat approval, and we are requesting at this time to modify that approval, and basically to separate the recording of the plat into 3 sections. The first being the commercial section tonight, which we would ask to be approved for recording. The necessity, if you will, to proceed this way emanated from the surety bonding requirements that the town has, and by proceeding the way we are, we were able to divide the surety bond for the infrastructure into 3 components to do one sequentially after the other as the work will be undertaken. So our schedule so you know, is that we are hoping to be able to receive your approval to record this as preliminary and final this evening. Excuse me, arrange for it to be executed hopefully tomorrow. We have made arrangements to post the initial bond, which is approximately $5.3 million. And we hope to record the plat early next week and to close our construction loan the following day.
All right. Thanks, Marty. We can go to Eric first. You want Eric?
Eric, you need to unmute, which would be *6. There we
Okay,
go.
now can you hear me?
Oh,
Not well, but
Not
yep,
well, but-
speak right into the mic.
Okay, I will. How's that? Better?
yeah, still low volume.
Still low.
Talk loud.
Okay, let's see. So, yeah, Marty's described it accurately. There's a proposed preliminary and final plat, and there's some, it's a little unusual in being, for this planning board, being proposed in sections, and so I'll let, we also have couple comments from the engineer and planner, so I'll let David Cooper describe, the special counsel for the planning board, address those circumstances.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Eric.
you.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
David.
Eric. Good to see everybody. What the applicant is proposing to do is record the plat, the subdivision plat, in sections. Substantively, it's not changing the project or what you've already reviewed or approved. It's just really a mechanism of how the plats are going to be.
Can you speak up a little bit, David, as well?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now, that's a
that
little better.
Yeah, okay, all right. And so, although it may be a little atypical for the town, New York State town law does envision allowing property owners to subdivide their property and file plats in sections in the way that Marty and Saber are proposing. And in fact, not only does New York State town law, but your local code contains provisions allowing it. So tonight, what the applicant is asking you to do is amend your preliminary subdivision plat approval so that the preliminary plat will now show the 3 sections that they're proposing. And then also issue final subdivision plat approval for section 1 of the plat. And once the conditions of that approval are met, many of them are already met, and I think most of them will be met by tomorrow, frankly. The chairman would be in a position to sign that plat, that section of the plat, allowing the applicant to file and record that section. There are timeframes that do apply because of the way that the plat is going to be filed in sections. First off, the 62-day requirement to record the plat within 62 days of the chairman signing would still apply. That's universal to any plat, whether it's one single plat or in sections. Within 30 days of the plat being, the first section being filed with the county, the applicant must provide the town clerk with the remaining sections of the plat, sections 2 and 3. And as we discussed on Tuesday, the purpose of that, I believe, is so that there's a clear record of what is supposed to be subdivided in the town's files early on, so that as time moves on, you've got the document or documents to understand precisely what has been approved here. And then finally, there's a 3-year period upon which all of the sections must be recorded with the county
Okay.
clerk.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a
So
timeline.
tonight, the main analysis is the amended preliminary plat and then also that first section. I can answer any questions or hand it over to, I guess, Eric or Andy with some of the comments.
So I'll just mention, this is Eric Holman again, and I'll just mention the board does have the code that allows the section filing to occur, as described by David, and it also has a resolution to a draft resolution of approval to consider for adoption tonight. And I'll also refer to CPL planner Liz Axelson and Andy Learn for any comments. They have conducted a review of the plat consistent with the submittal and related documents and site plan.
All right, thanks.
Sorry.
Liz or Andy?
Yeah, Liz, sorry, I didn't say Liz before because Eric had said engineering questions. I would have handed it over to you too, Liz. Sorry.
Emily, go.
It's fine.
Let's go to Liz first
It's
here.
fine. Honestly, the big issue tonight is for the planning board to understand procedure. My review dated July 6th. It really was just the culmination of having reviewed multiple versions of plan sets, which I know that the applicant's team have worked diligently to nail down all the details, and then to make sure that the plat in sections and also the final plat with just section 1 jibed with all the other plans we've been reviewing, and they do, and my comments are very minor. So I will take a look at whatever is submitted as quickly as possible. But I feel confident that that these two plats are very consistent with the overall plan set and all the notation that sort of links the site plan and the subdivision together. So
All right, thanks, Liz.
that's it.
Now, let's see who's on from engineering. Is it
Don Beer, I'll
Don?
jump in.
All right.
Yeah. We only have, well, let me first state the amount of the performance bond at $5,333,338. And we only have two other, I'll call them significant, maybe they aren't, comments. The first one being that we wanted to hear from the fire department about the way that the emergency access road is constructed off the end of the road, because it's got a 90-degree turn in it. We're not sure if they're going to be able to make it. And I did not see any fire department comments yet. We may have them. And secondly, we asked for a note, but the note we asked for in our letter, we actually did put it in two different times. We got picked up on the first one, not the second one, but I know that Andy has discussed this with Kyle, the exact wording of the note we need. We just need to make sure that phase 1C is shown to be constructed as part of this, part of the first section. And it wasn't clear on the map, so that's the other comment.
All right, thanks, Don. Anything to offer to that, Kyle?
Yeah, I could tell you, I don't know if Kyle's on, I could tell you that we received
Yeah, I see Kyle.
confirmation from Chief Mader before, and the current chief, Tim, pardon me, I can't remember his last name offhand, but he sent in a letter today reaffirming that they are fine with the fire access, ingress and egress as shown on the plat. And that was sent in today.
Right, so while we received it today, we'll submit it tomorrow with the revised plats for submission and signature. So both the former and the current chief, like Marty said, are good with it. And also, just to consider the fact that we did add the secondary access, so even without the turnaround, we wouldn't have, the access all throughout the site from both directions. But yes, they are good with that turnaround now.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
Kyle, did you speak with Andy about the note that he was looking for?
Yes, I spoke to him about the note, so we have that note now. The revised version of it is on the plat.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep.
And Kyle, I know you had some questions about a couple of comments that I had on my July 6th review letter. And again, those were all in consultation with the planning department. And I trust that David Cooper and Peter Wise will confer about whatever signed final easements and declarations are needed for filing.
Right, yeah, sorry, I was hoping to get that to you earlier today, so you'd have more time to coordinate it with us and Peter and David. But yeah, whatever we need to have submitted with, for signature with the plat, we'll surely do that.
Okay, and then I had minor comments, so I'll look for, I guess, some kind of revised map just to check those off.
Yep, we'll be submitting revised maps with the responses tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, sounds like you got it covered then, thanks. This is been advertised for a public hearing, so I move we open the public hearing for this project.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone on the meeting tonight that wishes to comment on this application?
You can raise your hand if you're on your computer, or you can use *6 to unmute yourself, *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone. Currently not seeing anyone.
All right. Scrolling through.
Scrolling through. No hands raised. No one's unmuting themselves.
Yep. Is there someone?
Is there someone named Mike Guestwick whose microphone was coming on there? Mr. Guestwick?
Do you wish to comment on this application?
Oh,
No.
now we just muted it. Okay.
All right. So seeing none, I move we close the public hearing for this project.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Ready for, go around the board for some comments. Start with Peter.
Peter, I'm going to unmute you again. I'm sorry, before I did that one, the dog was talking. So, there we go.
All right, how we doing?
Now you're good.
Hey,
All right.
We got you.
Good. Since we're discussing plat approval here, I was concerned, we received a letter from our engineer, Andy Learn, on July 6th, Article 3E. He expressed the concern that the town, as of July 6th, had not received a package of the signed easements and declarations. The town had not received a set of signed offers of cession to be held by the town, and the town had not received certified meets and bounds descriptions. And I just wanted to know where we stand on those three items.
So it's actually, there are two different categories there. So the first category is the declarations, easements, and other documents relating to maintenance and cross agreements of the owners of the property. Those documents need to be recorded simultaneously with the plat. So we will be provided with copies. We've already been provided with the final copies unsigned and have been signed off. Those signed recorded copies are now going to be provided to us in addition, together with the plat that's going to be filed.
Okay, that would be a condition of the approval?
Yeah, condition number, I want to say 3, but
okay.
don't quote me on that. And then I think condition number 11 deals with the offers of cessation and the deeds and the documents necessary for the town to take possession of the public improvements.
Go ahead.
That's going to occur. We're going to receive those documents once the improvements are complete. Because in order for the town to accept those improvements, the roads, the sewer, et cetera, we're going to need to review those and formally accept those documents. So the applicant has asked, we'll provide those to the town when improvements are done, and we're asking you, the town, to inspect and take action to receive them.
And what about the meets and bounds description?
The meets and bounds description, I think, with respect to the meets and bounds of the public improvements and the deeds that would be provided to us, that's going to be provided along with the offers of cession and the easements.
Okay, but we're there, it seemed to me, I heard tonight that we're looking to do this tomorrow. Are we gonna have all that by tomorrow?
Okay, I just fixed it. Now I'm here.
Right, hold on.
I'll take care of that. Hold on. Easier said than done.
So Peter,
Go ahead, David.
Got it, okay. The first category of documents, the documents relating to the properties, the master declaration, so who's going to maintain what's going to happen with Lot 12, that's coming with the plat, yes.
Okay.
Right? The other documents, offers of cessation and deeds with respect to what the applicant is going to be dedicating to the town, and the town will eventually be accepting that dedication. That's going to come once the improvements are in place, and they've asked the town engineer and us to inspect the improvements.
All right, so it's your advice that we do that, and you feel
Yeah,
comfortable
It's
doing
okay,
that?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Peter. Ben, any comments?
No, I don't have anything.
All right, thanks. Nicole?
No, nothing.
All right. Bob?
Yeah, I don't have any questions about, the application. I'm just curious, Marty, if the organization's had any discussions about any potential impact from the pandemic going around. Do you see it impacting your business plan, or it's, there's just nothing to be concerned about?
Well, first and foremost, we're always concerned about banks getting skirtish. And our bank has been sitting for a very long time waiting to close. They're in the business of putting out money. They've had a commitment out for over a year, which means that they have set aside the money without deploying it. We are basically, as we've expressed to David and others, we are now, time is of the essence. So we have to get the plat signed tomorrow, recorded next week, and closed next week. Even though we have great relationships with them, they are at the end of their rope, and they have officially reconfirmed and reapproved the loan several times now. In fact, we have signed all of the loan documents, and they're in escrow at the moment. The retailers, we fortunately have not had any issues with. I think it's because of the nature of the type of retailers that we have here. If we had, and the drive-throughs, quite frankly, are extraordinarily important. Some of these retailers would not have gone forward without drive-throughs, so that's crystal clear. The supermarket is an essential business, and their business is quite significant. What we've also experienced is a significant increase or acceleration, I would say, in the interest in the multifamily and residential. As you know, and we've shared with the board, I believe, various letters of intent from multiple national and local or regional real estate development firms who've expressed interest in purchasing parcels in the north. They have, over the last 30 days, come back strong with the intention of finalizing the letters of intent, getting into contract, and make applications. That will allow us to accelerate the development of the north, as well as accelerate the realization of the real estate taxes. Part of the reason is that they realize that people are looking to get to the suburbs, and we're seeing that in White Plains as well. We have a waiting list on all the multifamily units in White Plains from acceleration of people leaving New York City. So the multifamily developers and the residential developers are looking at Hudson Heritage as a refuge or an opportunity that will accelerate demand. And secondly, contrary to building in cities or more urban environments like New Rochelle, Stamford, White Plains, this product, the Hudson Heritage, is stick frame construction, less expensive to build, more affordable for essential workers, working class, even affordable. And we will be coming in with an operator to do affordable. I hope that the board will accept it well. I believe that there's a significant need for affordable in the town. We have a very high quality affordable operator that will be coming in. So we're seeing an acceleration of that. The hotel operators that we had pre-COVID went on hold. One of them has come back, and we are probably days away from executing that letter of intent. We had a letter of intent with an assisted living, independent living operator, and they have not come back to the table. From what I'm hearing about that sector, they are reconfiguring what the definition of independent living is on a going forward basis and rethinking the business model. So overall, I mean, we're in an excellent position at the moment to strike while the iron's hot, and we're hoping to move all of the parcels as quickly as possible and get them in the ground.
Yeah, that sounds good. You also forgot to mention you're near the train station for those who want to work in New York City and live somewhere else.
It's an interesting phenomena that you have the ability to have New York City incomes, if you will, and Dutchess County quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite unique.
Yeah. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Good to see
Great.
it. Good to see the demand is still there, and the project will go forward well. Anything from you, Joan?
Marty, I would just say thank you for sharing that last bit of information, and I don't have any comments or questions.
Right. All right, I guess we're ready for a motion then, Nicole?
I move that the planning board adopt the attached Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board resolution granting amended preliminary and conditional final major subdivision approval for the Hudson Heritage Project.
Second. Moved and seconded, grant conditional. Called to question by roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 6-0. Right.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And as we said, we do have a time is of the essence. And David, thank you for your help in moving it along. We will bring over a $5.3 million bond tomorrow or Monday, and we'll look to record the plat and close our loan and continue with the work. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'll look for the plat tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next up, Raymond Avenue School Property Redevelopment.
Night,
Site
everyone.
plan hearing for the Anchor Project. Who's on for this one? Do I hear?
We have Stuart Messinger with
Oh, I see
Chasen,
Jacob.
Kyle Bardwell, and Jacob Breckus is here.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jacob.
I'll start real quickly and say thank you for letting us present in front of you tonight. We're here to ask for the amended site plan and subdivision. We submitted a letter in our packet which shows the general highlights of what we had submitted, which in essence is maintaining the same number of residential units that was previously approved, 187 within the site, but redistributing some of them from the back to the front. Along with that, the structures in the back would drop from 7 stories to 6 story. Structures in the front would go from 2 stories to 3 stories. Same number of units within the site. The retail will remain running all the way across Raymond Avenue. But we're going to focus the retail and commercial space on the frontage of Raymond Avenue. We had some space on the back side of those buildings that were going to be tougher to lease out. We've since converted those into residential spaces. I am going to turn over to Stuart to handle all of the technical pieces.
Thanks, Jacob. Hi, everybody.
Thanks.
Nice to see you.
Stuart.
Wish we were there in person, but this seems to be functional. Want to just briefly go through a couple of things and then respond to some of the comments that we received subsequent to our submission. I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully that'll pull up a site plan.
That'll be good.
Which hopefully you can all see the site plan.
Now we've got it. Great.
Great. Okay. So as Jacob mentioned, what the major change is that some of the residential units are relocated from these two buildings in the rear of the property to the two buildings in the front of the property. These two buildings go down a story. These two buildings go up a story. We've reconfigured this building slightly and made it a little bit smaller. And the reason for that is that there's a central Hudson gas regulator located here where my cursor is. The gas regulator, it turns out, is incredibly expensive to move and not to mention very time consuming. And so we're working around it rather than attempting to relocate it. The changes in the project result in the need for 9 less parking spaces. You'll recall that we previously agreed that some of the parking can be shared because the uses have different peaking characteristics between the retail and the residential. So this actually improves that situation a little bit. We did receive comments, a couple of comments about the parking. One was to have a condition that requires that the spaces that are being used for snow storage be cleared within some number of days less than 10, and we think that makes sense, and 5 seems like a reasonable number to us. Remember, during a big snowstorm, people aren't going to likely be in the hotel anyway, so we don't think that's a big issue, and so if we want to make that 5 instead of 10, that's fine. There was a comment about trying to find a place for a electric vehicle charging station. We're happy to try to do that. Recall from an earlier conversation, it's not as simple as saying, okay, here's a charging station and we run a wire to it. It actually turns out to be quite an elaborate thing. But we certainly would like to have such a station, and we'll continue to investigate that.
Yeah,
and then there was a third comment.
So there'll be a lot of residents there, so it certainly is something going forward. There's
Yeah,
a lot more of them coming
agreed.
from different companies.
Agreed. The third comment with respect to parking related to not signing or designating spaces. It should be obvious that within the garage of the rear buildings, those spaces are going to be designated. And frankly, Jacob would like the ability to manage parking so that he can designate spaces for residents because, frankly, there's an income stream to that, and it makes sense in managing a property to let the landlord tell people where they can park. So we'd rather not have that as a condition of the site plan approval. Talk about visual for a second. Now, hopefully, I can make this work. I will stop sharing. The way this works, I think, is you have to stop sharing, and then you have to reshare. I've done this a couple times. So here we go. Look at that.
Well done.
You can all see this, right, I hope?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see the renderings of the buildings? So this is a rendering of 3-story buildings along Raymond Avenue. What's interesting, we think this is actually a positive change. Recall that the county planning department had suggested this all along, and because of Jacob's desire to move some of the residences from the rear to the front, we've been able to incorporate this change. We saw a comment from the public to the effect that it's a little out of scale with the buildings across the street. I won't argue with that, but I would say that what we're trying to do in the Anchor District is encourage other development in this scale, and I hope that over time you'll see more of this kind of street front rather than the sort of the older 1-story buildings that we have now. So again, we think this is a positive change. I want to show you one other rendering here. I go like this, and then I go here. This is a different angle. This is both a bird's eye view and then a front elevation view. The buildings are nicely articulated, have, I think, really attractive windows. In answer to one of the questions, the commercial space will all have frontage along Raymond Avenue. The fire department submitted comments suggesting that we have pedestrian bollards along the patio here. We had talked about that with you folks quite a while ago and all decided that we didn't want those bollards because we thought that it would interfere with the flow of pedestrians into the courtyard, and also because the sidewalk is 5 feet wide here. So it would take somebody really careening out of control on a straightaway to result in a problem. And then if I stop sharing again and then show you one more set of images, I think you'll see the third reason we wanted to do this. And that is, this is looking dead on into what will be the hotel. Remember that one of the things that we said we would do with the hotel was to try to incorporate architectural features of the Arthur May School. And so this way we have a clear view alley into the hotel building, and we think that that's really what you would want, what we would want with respect to it. So this is the other thing to show you is, again, we think these are pretty attractive buildings. They're well articulated, have some nice windows, have a commercial frontage along Raymond Avenue. There were a couple of other comments that we wanted to respond to. One, there were a couple comments from the fire department. Let me pull those out real quick, if I can find them. Or if I can remember, one of them had to do, here we go, one of them had to do with the type of fire protection. We, in our response letter, agreed with them that for any building over 30, where the floor is over 30 feet in height, will meet the criteria that they suggest. That's in our response letter to you folks. We have the notes in the landscaping plan that they requested in order to keep their facilities clear. I've mentioned the bollards already. And then they had a comment regarding gating of the Fulton Road access, and I think maybe they just didn't remember. There is no gate on the Fulton Road access. That's not a part of the plan. And they mentioned that it needs to have a bearing capacity for their trucks. The bearing capacity of that roadway is 125,000 pounds, so it's well in excess of their fire equipment. So I think we're all square with the fire department comments. And then the last set of comments that I wanted to address related were the ones that we just got from the county planning board. They suggested some changes to the way we access Raymond Avenue. We are very happy with this access because DOT is very happy with this access. We have a concept approval from DOT. We just have to submit the permit drawings to them. So with respect, we sure don't want to revisit that. You folks have previously given us a preliminary approval on this plan, and so we'd like to keep that as it is. They made some suggestions with respect to a crosswalk detail, the bike detail, and location of bike racks, and we take no exception to those. They're certainly the experts in that area, and we'd be happy to incorporate those. And then, of course, we're going to, as this gets built, talk to Dutchess County Transit about access to the site for a bus stop. So we submitted to you a document that compared the environmental impacts of the prior plan to this plan, and as should be evident, because this plan has exactly the same number of units, but a little bit less commercial space. All of the impacts that are based on metrics or numbers are actually a little bit less, and then other impacts are the same. About the only thing that you might look at would be the visual impact, and again, we think this is an improvement. It's in keeping with the county's comments and also in keeping with the intent of the anchor district. So what we're asking for you to do tonight is issue a negative declaration on the subdivision application. reaffirm your negative, reaffirm that there's no issue with, there's no change in environmental impact from the revised site plan, and issue a conditional final approval. I should have said a conditional final approval on the subdivision plan and a conditional final approval on phase 1 of the redevelopment project, phase 1 being the 3 buildings in front. We would come to you at a later date for site plan approval on subsequent phases, which would be the buildings in the back and the hotel building. So that's what we submitted. That's an overview, and we're happy to answer questions and talk about it.
All right, thanks, Stuart. Thanks, guys, for presenting. Let me go to Eric first for his
Sure.
recommendation.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. So, yeah, as Stuart described, there are there's a couple of procedures underway here. One is the proposed amendment to the site plan that the board previously approved but has not been signed. And that's for you to consider. Planner Liz Axelson has some comments about that to address. The board, in order to consider it, they would need to reaffirm, if they agree, they would need to reaffirm the environmental review conducted by the town board previously. And also the development master plan that was approved by the town board, they would need to confirm that this project is consistent with both of those before it does anything more. Then, if the planning board does that, it could consider a resolution of conditional site plan approval. And then as a second matter on the project is the subdivision, which the board circulated for lead agency last November and has taken no action on the preliminary plat. So if the board is inclined, it can review that. You have there's a resolution proposed for a secret negative declaration, if you agree with that. There's really not much of no change as a result of the subdivision beyond that considered by the site plan review, but it is a separate action. And then you could consider a resolution for preliminary and final plat approval if you're inclined. With that, I'll turn it over to Liz Axelson. She's reviewed the previous comments on the site plan and amended site plan.
Hi, Liz Axelson, CPL.
Liz?
When I saw the new plans and I saw the 3-story buildings up front, I instantly felt that it was a better match with the ATC and the AP project. And most of my comments are fairly nuts and bolts, and Eric and I conferred about whether this changed development master plan or seeker, and I firmly felt that this was, the proposal was ready to move forward, to reaffirm all those things and move forward with conditional approvals. I'm looking for some plan notation about the letter of resolution related to the historical aspects of the site. Otherwise, my comments are conditions of approval.
All right, thanks, Liz.
Any questions?
See if, is Don, anything from engineering standpoint?
We have a few comments, mostly about approvals. Probably the only one that's of any consequence is the Transportation Corporation that needs to be formed.
Oh, for the subdivision, okay. All right, thanks. And is Mark on for some traffic?
Yep.
And parking comments?
As Stuart had touched on some of the comments that I had mentioned in my letter, talking about the board's consideration of maybe less than 10 days to remove snow accumulation on the snow storage spaces. And then he mentioned about the designation of the parking spaces in there. So I just wanted to bring attention to that as he's looking to designate spaces, it looks like in the residential area. Under a typical weekday condition under the parking demand, you're probably going to have a surplus of only 11 spaces on a weekday at nighttime. So designating the spaces could be problematic, but if it's limited to maybe just under only building C1 and C2, that might be okay, because the majority of the site, based on the parking demand and shared parking analysis tables that were provided, the property is going to be pretty full on a weekday night time period. So anything more than that might be a little more problematic as far as designating spaces for the residential aspect of things. That's pretty much my comments, except for the snow condition. So under snow conditions, was stated, it just shows the insufficient parking with the potential snow storage spaces being occupied, but that's only under the winter storm conditions. Under typical conditions, it could be accommodated for parking events.
Okay. So, so they agreed to go, down to 5 days for clearing snow, so that sounded good to me as well.
Yep.
All right, thanks. And I guess overall it's a similar, just a handful more bedrooms, so nothing from a traffic perspective.
Yeah, the units are the same, but there are a little bit of more bedrooms. But as far as traffic is concerned, it's the same. Not much of a change.
All right, thanks, Mark. Okay, this is on for a public hearing, so at this time, I move we open the public hearing for this project.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone on the call tonight that wishes to comment on this project? Remember, you can *6 to unmute yourself, or *9 to raise your hand on the phone.
Hi.
Hi, Ann.
Ann Shershin, 6'4" Townsville person. Recognize? Okay.
Yep, go
I
ahead,
just
Ann.
want to say hello to all of you from lovely Wisconsin,
Yep.
where nobody wears a face mask and they're still drinking in the bars. So I'm looking forward to spending 14 days in quarantine when I return home and exploring the lovely options of home delivered groceries.
How do you know they're drinking in the bars?
Actually, they reported on the news. You
Oh,
know,
reported
watch
on
the
the
news
news.
and see them all drinking in the bars. So yeah, it's discussed
Got
a
it.
lot. It actually made the front page of the newspaper. So that's how I know. Anyways, I want to congratulate Jacob Reckes on purchasing the property. That's a huge step. And we had reviewed the 3 stories, the 3 stories Raymond Avenue. And I remember that that was initially in the initial plans earlier on. And I agree with that the two buildings closest to the intersection, it really kind of fits there because Bank of America is so tall and the church across the street is so tall. And the only thing I'd like to request is please look into the last building, that 3rd little building on Raymond Avenue on the other side of the driveway. If that could be reduced to 2 stories, and that would blend in better with the rest of the block, which is all 1- and 2-story buildings. So that's all my only request on this. And thank you.
All right, thanks, Ann. Anyone else in the meeting tonight wish to comment?
I'm looking through, I don't see anybody raising their hand, and it doesn't appear that anyone's trying to unmute.
I move we close the public hearing.
Well,
Second.
we're supposed to close the site plan public hearing?
Yeah, the public hearing was open for both site plan and subdivision. So I move that we close the site plan public hearing.
Carl, I don't know if now's the appropriate, can I make a comment just to, because I think we want to hear, because I think we want to share that we heard Ann's comments, and what we were trying to create is, as Stuart was mentioning, we actually went to our architectural team and looked at that. We're trying to create some sense of continuity now and just so everybody's on board and understands where we're going. The vision here is, we've talked about before, is, you get a new shirt, then you need new tie. You get a new tie, then you need new jacket. So we're trying to create this catalyst for future development, sort of coming north, going down south towards Vassar College. And so our hope actually is that by creating some sense of continuity across and down the site, it'll inspire that future development. And our vision of what we're trying to accomplish here is we do not have a 5-year outlook. We have a 50-year outlook about where this town can be and where our vision for the town is. So I also want to thank Ann. Ann has been a champion for the Arlington Town Center since the beginning, and we've been trying to work together on all these things. But I just wanted to put that out there. And I also understand about the parking comments. I think our goal is really, we just want to make sure that the parking is managed and manageable. So it's going to be a professionally managed site. I just want to make sure there's no comments on the site plan that would limit our ability to talk to any tenants and say, hey, don't leave your cars parking in the middle of this area, so that we can ask them to move around. That's really our only intent on having flexibility on the parking.
I mean, were you intending, as Mark mentioned, to be, mark spaces only under the buildings?
Cut that one.
I'm not sure you heard.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Mark had mentioned he'd be okay with that if you were marking spaces under the buildings only. I don't know if that was your intention.
It would be preferable if we could, if we could leave it for the entire site so that we could manage. I mean, we're not going to be blocking off behind the retail spaces. It would be highly preferable if we could have the site manager be able to guide where people can park, because we want to make sure that the commercials, our concern here is really small commercial spaces in downtown markets. We still think there's and it was interesting to hear Marty talk about the other site. We think that commercial space does have a future, and we think that the Arlington Town Center of all spaces has that future. But the question that we're going to be asked is, how are we going to control parking? And so if it becomes a problem, we just want to be able in the future to manage that. That's our real challenge.
Are you
Just
formally designated
certainly between the hotel and the front
or
buildings,
just
I
being
don't,
managed?
you don't want to designate anything, I don't think, because that's the shared between the business and but anyway. That's,
well, actually, that's a helpful point. I mean, really what we're thinking about is, if there are hotel guests, how do we encourage them to go to the back of the site so that they're not over parking in their cars for the weekend in the front? We don't know if that's going to happen, but we want to have that flexibility to then go to them and work that out.
Well, having the port cochere on the side there, on the south side of the hotel, they'll be driving that direction anyway to head toward the back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was intentional.
So they could certainly say that up on check-in. All right, not to belabor it, there's a motion to close the public hearing. Was it seconded? Call to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, let's go around the board for comments. Start with Joan this time.
Hi there. I don't really have much comment, except I know we're supposed to consider the parkland reservation fee for this project, so I was just kind of wanting to put that out there. It does seem like that would be appropriate for this application. I was wondering what other board members felt.
So if I can jump in on that, the board previously imposed the parkland reservation fee on the initial approval of this, and in the draft amended approval that I circulated, it's continued forward. So the obligation of the parkland fee would remain.
Perfect, great, thank you. That's it for me.
All right, thanks, Joan. Bob?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Regarding the snow removal, I would expect that if the conditions warrant it, that you get consecutive storms over, 2-3 days, that you would clear the snow as required, not sticking to a 5-day cycle time, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, our primary focus is going to be, we want to have residents and we want to keep residents and we want to have commercial users and keep them. So if nobody can park, there's going to be an uproar.
Right. Good strategy. The last thing, is there a downside to leaving that gas meter in place? I know it's expensive to move, but are there any negatives associated with it, the look of it, or?
Not from us. You know, one of the comical points is, as we've been talking about it, is even as we visit the site over years, we barely noticed it. It's screened with some bushes. It's been there for quite a long time. It serves quite a large area. So, you know, we design around it, and Central Hudson has a 10-foot easement right in that location. So the short answer is it's been there for quite a while. I don't think it's a major issue for us.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Nicole?
Do you have a hotel chain in mind, Jacob?
We have a couple chains in mind. We had been speaking to some operators before COVID. We thought we were pretty close. That conversation went to ice. We are now talking to some other partner operators and partner operators. So nobody that we're willing to commit to right now.
What about commercial or retail? Do you have people in line?
We've had people express interest. Again, you know, this is smaller commercial space. I'm proud and happy to say that we had more people reach out to us than we've reached out to about that space. We've had more people than the space that we have, which is good. But again, that was pre-COVID. And so now time will tell. We believe that there's it's as good of a location as you can get in town. So we have confidence that we can fill it.
Are you going to be leasing all the spaces, or are you going to try and sell some of the spaces?
The intent is to lease it.
Lease all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Ben?
Well, I'm glad to hear that they're drinking in the bars and not on the street in Wisconsin. That's good news. Also, there may be a charging station available at Golden Corral that's never used. Might be able to get that cheap. The parking. Are you concerned at all? You said it might be pretty full at night during the week. You concerned at all with guests or overflow going into the parking lots of other businesses in the area?
We're not too concerned. I mean, we set the parking to meet the code, and we think we can manage it, and we think we can balance it. So we feel comfortable about it.
Okay. That's it.
All right, thanks, Ben. And Peter?
No.
Peter's refused it.
Oh, that's right. You recused in this one. Let me throw my comments in. And I like the fact that it's going back to 3 stories, and which reduces the one in the back. There's had been comments about people complaining about the 7 stories in the back, so lowering it down by 1 story helps that issue. And I'm glad you're looking at the county's comments. I mean, they have the new county update of the county bike and pedestrian plan shows that they prefer the upside down U bike racks and whatnot, so work with them to see what and where that makes sense. And we talked about the charging station. I wondered, did you have any thoughts about, I noticed a letter of resolution from Chippo, but do you have any thoughts about artifacts from the school, of reusing them anywhere, maybe some kind of display in the clubhouse that honor the school and something like that?
Yeah, so that is an item that practicality is going to play a real role. So we've been talking about that in our design decisions, and hopefully you guys can see some, we've asked to design the buildings that honors the history of the school, and it meshes into the feel of the community. When we're dealing with that building, we're a little reluctant to commit to taking any parts and putting them into the first set of buildings, because we don't know the integrity when we take something off, whether it's going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a historic consultant that we're going to be working with, go through the building and come up with a plan with them.
Okay, it'd be nice if there's something somewhere on the site that talks about the school. My wife remembers Arthur S. May herself when she went to that school.
Yeah.
So, remembers him as a nice principal. Let's move on to my final comment is, it still goes back to the gas regulator. It's larger than I thought it was. It looks to be about 8 feet tall. There's some scraggly trees in front of it. But I didn't know if Central Hudson would be amenable to some other type of screening. I don't know if there's a way to put artwork on it, or, instead of the green, or if you think the green will blend in better, whatever. Just something to consider for how you're trying to, I'm just concerned what you're trying to do to hide it.
Yeah, happy to talk to them about that. Yeah. You mentioned that they do want to make sure that they have access for their work teams to get in there, but I agree with you, and I think we'll go back to them. It's taller than I remembered also. I told Mike that I thought it was shorter. It's about 8 feet tall, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Whatever you can do to.
Carl, this is.
Whatever you can do to improve the look
Eric.
of that. The last thing I had to say is there's a utility pole right next to it, I believe, that might be used to power it. So I don't know if that could be put underground, get rid of that pole.
It's a gas relief valve, so it actually has to be above ground because it's an emergency valve that they have. They have 2 easements. Yeah.
I meant the utility pole next to it. I think that was providing power to it.
Oh, we'll go and ask them.
So that might be something to get rid of the pole at least.
Okay.
All right.
Eric was trying to add.
Go ahead,
something.
Eric.
Oh, I just wanted to say the board's had some questions about the parking and designation, and I did discuss that with Liz and with Mark Petro a bit. Although Stuart's correct, the required parking number does go down. The parking, Mark's comment came because the parking demand actually goes up slightly during the overnight hours for the increased residential use from the additional bedrooms incrementally. But the staff would have no problem with designation of some parking, like was discussed in back. The issue, the only concern about parking was the constraint for residential overnight parking. So if the board wanted to allow for some parking, the only adverse effect of that might be on the availability of parking for businesses, not on the overnight parking for residents. So if the board wants to do some of that, wants to adjust that condition, that's fine.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. I think the board, any comments from board members that you're amenable to the parking designation? Hearing none, I think we're ready to move on with some resolutions.
So this is Lisa, before you go, Nicole.
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
So there are a couple of things based on today's events that we have to change in the draft resolution that you have. First of all, on page 5, we'll be filling in the date that we got the comments from Dutchess County, and we will be adding that it was local concern with comments. On page 11, we'll be deleting condition 11 because it's no longer needed because we actually heard from the Dutchess County Department of Planning today. On page 7, the condition that we had was simply that there would be, hold on, I'm scrolling, that excess snow be removed from parking spaces following winter storms. And so what I'm hearing now is that we will add a within 5 days to that condition. And the way it's currently worded on the parking is the planning board continues its condition of approval that spaces not be reserved or otherwise dedicated to a particular use or user except for 3 rideshare and designated accessible parking spaces, leaving all available to meet demand as needed. So if the board wants to make some changes to that, the scriveners need to know what the board would like to do.
Yeah, I think the board in general has been amenable to allowing to designate some spaces.
So you want to make it work with staff, something
Yeah,
along those lines?
let's do that, work with staff on coming up with that. Does anyone on the board have any objections?
No.
All right,
No, I don't have any.
Okay, thanks. Let's have Lisa
I'm
work
good,
with
thank
staff
you.
on that. We'll adjust it as need be. We can still conditionally approve it tonight. All right, go ahead, Nicole.
I move that the planning board find that the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment site plan involves changes of negligible magnitude and scope relative to the site plan for the project conditionally approved by the planning board on November 21st, 2019, and that the changes are non-significant and consistent with the previous seeker negative declaration adopted August 21st, 2020 by the town board as lead agency for the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment project zoning text amendment for the anchor project in the ATC district and site plan, and that the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment site plan is consistent with the development master plan for this project as adopted by the town board on August 21st, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded for seeker. Called to question by roll call. Peter? Oh,
I'm recused.
recused, right, sorry. Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 5-0 with 1 recusal.
I move that the planning board adopt the amended resolution of conditional site plan approval in the matter of the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment as prepared by town planning staff, council, and consultants.
With
As
the
amended
with the
during
amendments,
tonight's
with the amendments Lisa went over tonight.
Thank you.
Is that moved and seconded? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. To grant conditional site plan. Called to question by roll call. Joan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion passes 5-0 with 1 recusal. Let's see, are you prepared to do any architectural presentation tonight, Jacob, or you want to come back for that?
We'll come back for that.
All right, want to do the motion there, Nicole, to defer architecture?
I move that the planning board defer architectural review approval for buildings A, B, E of the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment project.
Any conditions? Let's see, we'll do that when we do architecture, see if there's any additional conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer architecture. Called to question by roll call. Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Motion passes 5-0 with 1 recusal. All right. We did not yet close the subdivision hearings. Is there any open questions with that? Lisa? Okay, no issues with that. I move that we close the subdivision hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Called to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Let me do it by roll call. Ben?
Okay. Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Motion passes 5-0 with 1 recusal. Close the subdivision hearing. And go ahead, Nicole, with additional motions.
I move that the planning board as lead agency determine that the Raymond Avenue School property redevelopment subdivision application would not have a significant adverse effect on the environment, and that no environmental impact statement will be required for the reasons set forth in the seeker negative declaration for a type 1 action dated July 16, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Called to question by roll call. Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 5-0 with one recusal.
I move the planning board grant conditional preliminary major subdivision approval, waive a public hearing on final major subdivision approval, and grant final major subdivision approval for the Raymond Avenue School Property Redevelopment Subdivision, application subject to the following. Respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, and set responses to be reviewed by the planning department as adequacy and completeness, inclusive not limited to A through M.
Second.
Moved and seconded for grant conditional subdivision approval. Called to question by roll call. Joan?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 5-0 with one recusal. All right, we'll
Thank you very much.
see you back for
Thank you,
architecture
everybody.
and see what you can do about hiding that gas regulator.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Have a good evening. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everyone.
Next up is Eastdale Village, another small project in the town.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members.
Let's see. Hey, Jeff? So
Can I start here?
amendment number 10, looks like you got some bigger changes this time. That you let us insight into last time, but go ahead with your presentation.
Right. Well, although actually, do you want to open the public hearing before I do the presentation, or do the presentation first, or how do you want to?
Let's see the presentation first, and then
Okay, sure.
we'll,
So again, Jeff Kane representing Village, and Giovanni Palladino as well, who's been our in-house architect guiding the project. So as we discussed in our, and if I can share the screen with you, let me just.
Yeah, that's okay, Jeff. Yep.
Right. So as we discussed, we have modified some of the program proposed on the west side of the project. This really the 10th site plan amendment that we've had in front of you. So the proposal is to modify the residential density, increasing it from 390 units to 437 units. So that those units are really in two categories. One is your multifamily units that are allowed through the zoning code, so that's really the zoning density. So that's an addition of 27 units. And then the second is an increase of 20 units for residential above commercial. We've seen a fair amount of demand for those types of units, and so we're asking for an increase in the zoning doesn't have a cap on number of units, but our seeker analysis on the original EIS only included a certain number of those residential above commercial. So we're asking that the analysis now include an additional 20 units above commercial as part of the program. We're also asking to increase the allowable commercial density on the site. Now, again, the zoning code doesn't specify a cap on commercial density, but there was an analysis done in the seeker documents of a certain number of square feet. And so we're asking that increase from 116,735 square feet up to 156,735 square feet. What we found is that there's been good demand for commercial space, but the way the commercial space is built has caused us to need more density. In fact, what we found is that there was a larger demand for basements than we anticipated. And a basement in a commercial building counts as a commercial square footage. So when we did our calculations of demand, we did not include basements in our number, but you do. So we're asking for the overall, from a zoning perspective, an increase in the commercial space. And we think we have a good demand for commercial as well. It's been a combination of items that have really kind of driven that request for commercial density. The way that we're, and this is again is the overall site plan. You can see 44 across the top of the page here. Our Main Street, Eastdale Avenue South, runs perpendicular to 44, and it terminates in the residential zones. These are all residential uses back here. And then we have townhouses, two-story townhouses proposed to be adjacent to the existing residential neighborhood. And then we have our commercial core up in the area close to 44. So the and here's just a blow up of the commercial core. You can see buildings. We've continued our naming nomenclature. Letters are commercial or mixed use, and numbers are residential buildings. So we end up on a G on the other side of the street. So when I go H, I, J, K, and L, continuing in this clockwise motion for the site here. So we really haven't changed the footprint on these buildings, even though we've asked for additional commercial density. We haven't modified these buildings. We know that once our final work with tenants, and in some cases with owners of these buildings, it's finalized, the specific footprint of these buildings is going to change to accommodate that demand. So these are somewhat the exact footprint of the building are placeholders, but we feel pretty confident that these curb lines are what's going to really kind of define the streetscape and parking of the site, and then we'll work to make the buildings fit within those curb lines to the extent that it makes sense. We have to change it, we'll change it, but we think this plan really makes sense for these commercial buildings. And then the residential area, how we increase the extra 27 residential spaces, we're requesting to go to 4-story buildings for those residential buildings in the rear. So we've done 3-story residential buildings, and your code allows what's called a 3.5-story. Both of them are capped at 50 feet high. So we want to actually build it to that 4th floor instead of a half floor. The difference in your code just requires that if on a half story, that the roof line is actually, it would have to be lower across the top here, so we couldn't have full height windows and still get what's called a full story. We could get the same density with a 3.5-story building, but we think architecturally and for the use of the building, a full 4-story, that extra half story of benefit on these buildings will make them look much better and be a much nicer product. Interestingly, in the commercial district, 4-story buildings are allowed. These could all be 4-story, but these residential buildings here are limited in the code right now to 3.5 stories instead of at 50 feet high, instead of 4 stories at 50 feet high. The 3 that we're requesting a change, that gets the distance. So in April, we prepared a speaker analysis, which described. We looked at the findings in the initial EIS, prepared an analysis comparing this additional commercial and residential density, and the impacts of that expansion to the limitations discussed in the adopted finding statement. And in addition, the town has conducted traffic analysis to do the same thing, to look at the initial mitigation required for traffic and what would be required as part of the this expansion. So we've submitted those documents to you for review, and I know the town has proceeded to redeclare themselves as lead agency for the project. And so we're really here tonight to listen to any comments and questions you may have. I know we've seen some staff comments. I have a couple things I want to talk about with the board at the appropriate time, but for now, I think that covers our initial presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. We move to Eric for his recommendation tonight.
Sure. This is really the board's first chance to get comments from its consultants and review the plans. When the application was first submitted in May, the information was not complete. It came in late, so the board basically approved circulated it for seeker circulation at that time. There's been no objection to the board continuing its seeker review of it. So tonight we have comments from consultants and from staff. The board, the recommendation is for deferral because the staff wanted to hear how the board felt about the seeker, the evaluation of seeker consistency. We didn't yet have comments at the time from all of the consultants. I'll ask them to speak in a moment. It appeared the engineer had some concerns for additional information that the board might want to see or had considered as part of its environmental consistency review, although they may not, their significance is not entirely clear. There were also some comments from the staff that it would be helpful if the board would advise staff if it has any additional concerns that should be addressed for the environmental review. There was some information on the plans about future parking and land bank parking, so we're not sure what the future parking means. The land bank parking is already indicated. We wanted to know if the board had any concern with the community services and fiscal economic impact analysis. It seemed reasonable, but we didn't do, a consultant did it last time. And the parking changes overall with the increased residential, we think the revised layout and land banking is probably reasonable, but the board should weigh in on that as well. And also the height increases in back. We didn't see substantial problems with any of those, but if the board can comment on those aspects in consultant reviews, then staff could have a resolution prepared for the next time. So with that, maybe I'll ask Alana of VHB to comment on her traffic review.
Sure, no problem.
Right.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Alana Moran with VHB. We looked at the potential traffic impacts associated with this increased density that Jeff had described. Specifically, what we did was look at the trip generation for those additional residential units and the additional square footage of commercial space using methodologies that were used when we completed the traffic impact evaluation for the previous finding statement and all the previous seeker documentation. So everything follows those same methodologies and same guidelines. Based upon the generation estimate, these additional square footages are anticipated to generate roughly 70 new trips during the morning peak hour, 78 new vehicle trips during the PM peak hour, and an additional 85 new vehicle trips during the during the Saturday peak hour. Those trips get distributed throughout the network, and they travel, some go north, some go south, so those trips get distributed throughout and kind of minimize the potential impact at the adjacent intersections. As you may remember, when this project went through the original seeker review, there was quite a lengthy list of mitigation measures as identified by New York State Department of Transportation. Those mitigation measures have been constructed with one caveat, that the adaptive traffic signal controls, which basically allow the traffic signals to be more responsive to the actual traffic volumes that are placed at the intersection. So those adaptive traffic signal controllers have been installed, but it's up to the New York State DOT to implement them, to actually turn them on. When they're implemented, industry standards and industry publications are stating that on average, there could be roughly like a 10% benefit. Some locations more, but 10% is on the average. So a 10% reduction in travel delay through the corridors, roughly 10% increase in intersection capacity, that type of thing. So when what we did is complete an operational analysis of those study area intersections, the same ones that had been done previously as part of the seeker review and finding statement, and essentially found that there will be some minor increases in delay. I think most notably at the primary site access intersection where the new traffic signal is in place at that main site access, and also at the DeGarmo Road intersection where there's already some capacity constraints. So those places would be starting to see a little bit of increase in delay based on trips. However, there's no real additional mitigation. We still see that the mitigation measures identified in the original seeker evaluation finding statement and as constructed by the applicant are sufficient to increase traffic.
Okay, thanks.
Glenn, I would just, and we had this conversation earlier in the week, so I think I say this.
It's hard to hear you, Jeff, a little bit.
All right. I think I say this correctly, is that the 10% potential reduction in delays is not represented in your model. It's not something that can be modeled, and so the what you provided is really a worst case scenario that it can get better than that once the adaptive controls are in place. Is that correct?
Yes, that's definitely a fair representation. That is not isn't as these traffic signals will actually be in the field is a worst case representation of the.
Okay, great. Let's see. This is on for a.
Don?
Yeah, let me go to Don. Engineering concerns remaining. And I did have a question on that. There's a lot of stormwater changes.
Okay. We have, we've talked about the future parking area, and I think we've agreed with Jeff to give us some idea of how many future spots there will be in the parking area as opposed to actually showing a layout, because they don't know exactly what kind of layout there would be. We have some sewer comments. There's been some changes to Pump Station 2. There's been some changes to the Water and Wastewater Engineers Report. There's been, we would like a discussion of how much additional sewage, if any, would be used for this modification. And those are the main comments. You said you had a stormwater question?
I guess I was curious, the new stormwater ponds above ground now, are they intended to always have water in them, or one of them? Or are they generally dry until a rainfall event?
Well, maybe I'll let Jeff answer that if he knows more directly, but they won't have, I don't believe they're going to have standing water in them, except maybe during storm events, if that's what your question is.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Don's got it right. These are not wet ponds. I will correct that if I'm wrong, but I think that's correct. These are designed to infiltrate, so they will have water as released gradually back into the groundwater system.
Okay. Thanks. And I know one of the neighbors brought up concerns of safety, and I appreciate you answering Mr. Breck's questions from his letter. But one of them was stormwater safety, as well as the exit onto Darrow, which looks like you're proceeding with that.
Right, they're very real issues in terms of safety, and so the design of these basins, so they're benched, so you don't have a deep edge. If somebody falls in, they can get out, and plus they're fenced and signed to keep people away and warn them of potential hazards. So we've tried to pay attention to those safety issues in this project.
Okay, great. All right, now I'll move on to anything from Lisa from this project? All right, let's move on to, I'll move to open the public hearing for this.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Is there anyone in the audience tonight wish to comment on this project? Remember, if you're on the phone, *6 to unmute, or *9 to raise your hand, or raise your hand on the Zoom meeting.
I'm not seeing anybody on the participant list with raised hand, or no one looks like they're trying to unmute their microphone.
All right. Jeff, when do you think you'll be submitting to come back? For September or August?
We are ready to submit on July 27th for the August meeting.
All right. I move we adjourn the public hearing to August 20th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, let's go around the board for comments. Start with Peter.
I have a question for the board attorney, and that is for this 4-story building. Do we need any input from the ZBA for that?
It's my understanding that the applicant will be submitting to the ZBA, or am I incorrect, Jeff?
We absolutely would submit to the ZBA, but the question becomes, when is it, for this? Well, I guess it'll have to be after you complete seeker, so it'll be after that happens.
You can, Jeff, start the process with the planning board, the zoning board earlier if you choose, but I don't have a feeling that they will need that many meetings for this project, for this change, since it's relatively minor. But to answer your question, Peter, it will require a variance from the ZBA.
Okay.
Can I just ask if everyone could just make sure you speak close to the mic and a little bit more forcefully, because from the meeting room, it's a little bit hard to hear some of the participants on the phone or on the Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we hear you, Peter. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Next item I have here is, we received the traffic study just a few days ago. Really haven't had a chance to study it. But on the LOS table, there are a lot of C's, D's, and F's, which are very concerning, and it's really hard to get my arms around, the additional space, commercial space, the additional number of residential units, equating to only 70, 80 additional trips per day. But I'm not going to argue with that tonight. It's just a concern. I'm going to take a better look at it before we talk again, but I just wanted to let you know that's something I was concerned about. And finally, have you had or are we going to be seeking any input from the DOT regarding the additional trips per day?
Peter, I did follow up. You had asked about that. I did follow up. So first of all, it was circulated to the state agencies that we typically circulate to, the New York State DEC and the New York State Department of Transportation. They had not responded. So 2 days ago, I did send a reminder email to the DOT reminding them about the circulation and asking if they had any additional comment on the amended application. And so far, I have not heard anything back.
Okay. Finally, for Jeff Kane, you paid a huge amount of money for those adaptive signal controls. Have you had any communication with DOT about why they haven't turned them on?
So, yes, I mean, look, a lot of conversations. I think one piece of it is that, it's not been imperative for them to need to turn it on. We're at about 30% of our residential occupancy, and we only have one of the commercial uses up, and that's the medical building. So, we aren't at the point where it's become an issue. But we finished that work in the December, and we're prepared for DOT to turn them on. DOT then started a pavement restoration program. You might have noticed in front of Adams, Cherry Hill, down through. So they had to take some of the work we did apart and put it back in. So that work just got completed, and they're now at the point where they can all the programming's done. They can flip the switch when they're ready, but they just it's only been really a couple of weeks that's been completed enough for them to turn it on. But it's been
Good, thank you.
All right, yep, I've noticed there's some new pavement going through there, so that's a plus, but it would have been nice to be coordinated. I just had a quick question before other comments. Jeff, Peter alluded to all the additional commercial space. Can you say, is there a certain percentage of that's the basements? Or is it more?
I think, yeah, right. I'm just off the top of my head. I think on the west side, we might have had 10,000 square feet in basements. I don't have that number in front of me, and I'm sorry, but
Okay, just looking for a swag of,
right.
what's going to be new versus basement. All right. Maybe you can define that better for when you come back.
Yes, I will. Right.
Let's go on to Ben.
I'll wait till hear more. Nothing now.
All right, Nicole.
Peter kind of touched on a couple of things that I was interested in hearing more about. So other than what Peter had already talked about, no.
All right, thank you. And Bob?
Nothing new from me.
And Joan?
Yeah, I was also interested in getting more information about the adaptive controls. So that was really it. Just, is it ultimately the DOT's final determination as to when to turn that on?
Yes, we can't flip the switch. They're the only ones that can.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Joan. I've got no major comments additional to that myself either. It looks like things are moving along out there. Well, that's good. They're back under construction.
One of the things that would be helpful for us would be if, just in terms of seeker, are there any other areas that anyone on the board feels need more in-depth investigation? We know we've dug into the traffic and we've talked a little bit about that tonight. Is there any other questions related to seeker that we should be asking the applicant to provide us?
I think, I had a question with Don alluded to the parking, so I think he has that in his thing, but
okay.
Right now, there's, on the east side of closer to Darrow Place, there's a lot of lawn area now that says future parking, so I don't know what that means, so if you can, it'd be nice to.
Can I talk about that for a second? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
If I can share my screen again.
The less activity close to Darrow Place, the better, but if you don't need it as parking, but what does future parking mean?
Right. So, so here's the, again, the, here's that commercial core, and what we've done is kind of define these gray areas here and over here as future parking. Now we have land bank parking areas, and that's, you can see this gray area here is land bank, this area here is land bank. What we learned on the west side of the street is that the particular uses and particular configuration of these buildings is subject to change. This is the 10th time we're in front of it. We'd like to reduce the number of times that we are going through this process. And so and at the same time, we understand that there's a note on the drawing and there's an understanding that if you, the board, think that it's under park, you have the right to open up the site plan and get us to provide more parking. So what we wanted to do was say, look, if we think we need parking, if you think we need parking, where is that parking going to go? Generally, what are the areas reserved for that additional parking? So that's why these future parking areas were set aside so that we know, hey, if we have to park, this is where we're going to park. We didn't go through the exercise of putting aisles and stripes on here because really what would I think happen is if we needed to add more parking here, we would kind of reimagine this whole area and restripe it differently. Before it was built, we would restripe it and propose a different curbing layout here. But we don't know what the configuration ultimately wants to be, so didn't think it made sense to try to design something in a little bit of a vacuum. And the missing piece of it are the users in the buildings. So we don't want to design something differently until we knew exactly what we're going to need. Then we'd come to you with a real plan.
Okay.
But the idea behind these future parking areas was to kind of put more definition around the areas that this parking could be in. And one of the things again that Don touched on, how much parking could these future parking areas hold? And it's and we've taken a guess at it, but it's not really just a question of how much parking could go in this gray area. It's how does this whole area look differently if we incorporate this space into parking. So those are what we were going to do is provide an alternate sketch for the seeker review of, well, what could this look like in a little different plan? What could this look like in a different plan if we can reimagine this area and needed to provide more parking? Because we thought that would provide some, again, understanding of it would be a potential alternate layout to address the need if we needed more parking in the commercial areas. Is that clearer about what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you don't have tenants for all those buildings yet, so you're trying to work through that as it comes.
Absolutely.
Jess, this is Eric Holman. So just for my own understanding, are you seeking just to get board reaction conceptually, or are you seeking some kind of a board approval of it for seeker purposes? For the former, I don't think it's any problem to show it on there for discussion purposes, but I guess for approval, it's not clear to me how staff or the engineer could evaluate it for seeker purposes without more detail, because without knowing how much impervious is there and how many spaces and how close is it to other things, the property line and other things. Without that information, I'm not sure it can serve for seeker or site plan review.
Right. So Eric, we weren't asking for either. We understand that if we change this in the future and put parking there, that will be subject to its own seeker review. What we were just trying to do is show an area so the board would understand that if the board or we came to some conclusion we needed parking there, it would be clear that, hey, we've thought about it. These are the areas where we would go first to add parking. So and perhaps I overcomplicated the issue by even putting it on here, but we've gone through an internal process of where would we put parking if we had to. Okay, this is where it is. Let's all have it in our mind so that they could be future parking areas, so we don't end up putting something there that that we forgot that we needed it for parking. So that's all it was. We weren't asking for seeker approval for parking in those areas. Just a recognition from everybody that if we had to add parking, these are the areas we go to.
Right. And one of the things we discussed.
So it's basically,
Eric, one of the things we
conceptual but not proposed.
Eric?
Yes. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we discussed out in the field today with Andy when we were looking at another part of the site was just that, by at least just showing where how those spaces might fit even conceptually, at least, that kind of proves them out a little bit, but we don't want them designing those, it doesn't make sense to have them, designing all of the other components of what those parking areas would be at this time, because the idea is not to use them if they're not needed.
So maybe a change in note on the plans from future parking to potential future parking location or something like that would
Yeah.
alleviate everyone's concerns that this is a, something that's getting some sort of approval now.
Yeah.
Because future parking sounds like it's imminent, it's just in a later phase.
So potential, yeah.
Yeah,
Potential,
that works for me. Potential future parking area.
Yeah.
that sounds good. I mean, we don't want to over-park it for sure. The less impervious, the better. But don't
Yeah,
want it to be.
that kind of ties in with our other conversation about our demand numbers for residential parking. And again, it's funny that the county pointed out in their letter that the code requires 1.5 parking spaces per residential unit. We initially proposed 2 parking spaces per residential unit. As we built out and occupied the west side, that number's too high, and so we've reevaluated that down to 1.8 parking spaces per residential unit, which we think gives us adequate residential parking. So that's kind of, again, the concept of not overbuilding, building the right number is certainly driving us in this project.
Yes, I recall the county was after you and us to reduce the number of parking spaces.
Sometimes they're right.
Yeah.
So, so we've got some land bank and others, but I also want to make sure there's enough parking for visitors. You're going to have a lot of people living here and parties happen and things, so make sure there's sufficient for that as well.
Yes.
All right, any additional comments from the board on this? The only thing I'd mention, I think Eric mentioned, to make sure there's enough screening on the west side of the east side, if you know what I mean. To those 2 residentials, there's a fence and whatever else needs to happen there.
No, we saw that. That's a good idea. We'll extend that fence up to near the intersection with 44.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Go ahead, Nicole.
You have to unmute, Nicole.
I move that the planning board defer further action on this application and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and to any comments and responses received from the town department and other agencies included but not limited to the following 1 through 13.
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer. Call the question. All those in favor by roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right. Good luck, Jeff. And we'll see you back
Thank
here
you.
next month.
I'll see you later. Right.
Yes, that's true too. All right, next up for public hearings is foam and wash. And staff recommends that they be adjourned, so I move we adjourn the public hearing to August 20th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Called to question by roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 6-0. This time, I move that we allow public comment on any other agenda items on tonight's agenda. We ask that you please limit your comment to no more than 3 minutes, and the planning board will consider the comments made during this portion of the meeting, but will not respond to them during the meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to open for public comment. Call to question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, anyone wish to comment on any other items on tonight's agenda? Please,
You can raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or unmute yourself. We can also, if you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by using the *9 and unmute yourself using *6. I see we have Jim Greaves. If you want to unmute yourself and then go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Hey, Jim, we can hear you.
Okay. So we can comment on the secret for the Malabar project, or are these on the previous items discussed?
Yep, go ahead with your.
All right, I just want to say that I'm a New York State Code Enforcement Officer, and I've worked as Deputy Building Inspector for local municipalities. My duties have included enforcing the code, plan review, and zoning code enforcement. I just want to start by saying that although the board did not have to contact us about tonight's meeting on the Malabar project, it would have been really nice of them to do it, considering this has been a contentious issue for the last 6 years. So, you know, it seems like we're starting this process again right where we left off last time. So I just want to say for the record that the town of Poughkeepsie has a law that states a gas station cannot be built within 500 foot of the residential district. That's the law. Mr. Jose, over the past 6 years, has not been able to prove he continued non-conforming use of pumping gas at a major motor vehicle repair facility within a year prior to the original application. At the beginning of the year, a group of residents from Over Rocker Road, at the 44 end of Over Rocker Road, asked the town board if there was any way to get a no left-hand turn off of Route 44 onto Over Rocker Road. The town board agreed to the petition to the state, and the state granted this request. Then the coronavirus hit, and the public hearing that was supposed to take place couldn't be scheduled. However, after speaking to the council person, the plans are still in the works to get this done. So this is taking the traffic off of 44, stopping the traffic coming off of 44 and turning on to Over Rocker Road. Now, a lot of things have transpired over the last 6 years. Number one, the Eastdale Town Center is being built, and we just heard from that young lady, Miss Moran, and they were required to do a traffic study, and they just completed another traffic study. All of the intersections from the Mid-Hudson Bridge on both sides of the arterial up Dutchess Turnpike to Pleasant Valley are being reworked because of this development. Now, Ms. Moran just stated that these additional apartments that they're talking about putting out in Eastdale are going to increase the constraints on the traffic at the DeGarmo intersection. That's where we're talking about right now. We're talking about where that gas station is being built, all right? So there's also, that we just discussed earlier, the proposed Raymond Avenue subdivision, which is also going to add to the traffic load in this area. So the last time Malabar, Mr. Jose presented his plans, he was allowed to get away with only doing a partial traffic study. In light of the new town center, rework intersections, and about the no left-hand turn that's about to come into effect in Over Rocker Road, I request that Malabar do a complete traffic study this time around. He needs to do it. Our neighborhood worked very hard to get that no left turn approved by the state. It was done because of the number of cars who use our local roads as a bypass to get around the increased traffic on Route 44. Mr. Jose wants to have an exit on the Over Rocker Road. He needs to do this complete traffic study to see how the traffic entering his facility off of 44 and putting an exit on the Over Rocker Road is going to impact the local roads. Just for the record, there's 19 school-aged children who live from the corner of Route 44 down to the corner of Overlook and on the block to Albert and back to Route 44. 19 school-aged kids.
Okay, can you wrap up, Jim?
Yes, sir, I'm just about done. My other concerns are many, including the potential hazards associated with having underground gas storage tanks, dispensing of flammable petroleum products in a residential neighborhood, the numbers of people coming in and out of our neighborhood on a daily basis at all hours of the night, with other types of potential hazards in the ground contaminants at 219 over Rocker Road that haven't even been looked at, about the lighting under the new energy conservation code, signs, smells, and all the other assessed atrocities that are going to go on with the gas station. And for the record, Mr. Jose mowed his lawn today for the first time all year because he knew he was going to be on the agenda this evening. And that's only because he was reported to the town building department, and they took into the matter to get that lawn mowed. So this is what we're going to have to continue to deal with if you allow this project to go through. Thanks for giving me the extra time. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for your comments. Anyone else wish to comment on tonight's agenda items?
Yeah, Peter Mack has raised his hand.
Good evening. Pardon the apparel. I'm still at duty over at West Point. I am the owner of 206 Over Rocker Road, where our family has owned this property since 1971. I'm not going to talk about the 8 variances or the special use permit, that Malabar Realty needs. What I'm going to talk about is effective stewardship and management and being a good neighbor, which Malabar Realty has not been. Aside from the elephant grass, which has reached, upwards of 6 feet high for a 20 square foot section of grass, has been unkempt. 2-family house on Over Rocker Road is half demolished. Windows are removed, siding is falling off, some of it into the road. There's trash and demolition debris, on the side of the house. The fence is falling down, around the property. There's windows broken on the front door in an apparent act of vandalism. I would encourage all of you to Google the broken window theory and see what us neighbors are having to deal with. The front lot, the tanks were removed. The lot was half filled in. There's weeds everywhere. Would you trust this guy to build a gas station? I've been in the military and the Army for 26 years. I know effective leadership and management when I see it. I don't see it here at all. What about crime? What about noise and light sensitivity for us neighbors? You're shoehorning in a mega gas station right up against a residential district. There's an apparent double standard here. If we did this with our properties, we would be fined, we would be held accountable. Malabar Realty has not been. I would challenge anybody on this board. I would challenge the supervisor. Would you want this next to your house? And if I can, I'm going to share some pictures because a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see this?
Yeah,
No.
briefly. Not yet.
Is it up?
No, it's not up.
Okay.
Share screen. Got it.
How about now?
Now it's coming up. Yep.
There we go. Yep.
Okay. So this is that 2-story house, and these pictures were taken on July 4th. You can see the fence is falling down. There was a 2-family residence. It was built around 1900. Half demolished. You can see the windows are out. This is what we're having to look at every single day. Here's the broken windows in the front door, an apparent act of vandalism. It wasn't like this when they were removing the windows and they were abating the asbestos. Here's some of the debris on the side of the house. That siding has fallen out onto Over Rocker Road. Here's the fence that's falling down in the grass. Again, another picture of the side of the house. Again, the back of the property, unkempt, not taken care of. What does it take to maintain and cut a 20 square foot section of grass? Again, another picture. And here's the front of the property adjoining Route 44. You can see barely, you can see some construction barrels, you can see the weeds, you can see the fence falling down, and see if I can get a better picture. You can see the gravel where they where they excavated the tanks and then half filled it in. I think I see many different safety hazards here.
Yeah, it's definitely in disrepair. Thanks for showing the pictures. Right.
So these are the things that we've been dealing with, for the past 6 years. But Malabar Realty has proven through their actions and their inaction, that they couldn't care any less about the neighbors or being a good neighbor. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right. Thank you.
I would like to speak.
Who's, who's that?
Barbara Kaplan.
Barbara Kaplan. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Kaplan. I am a unit owner and president of the Chanticleer condominiums at 2833 Route 9D. I'm wanted to speak right now on the merging of the Delaverne Avenue subdivision and the South Hills Commons. I know this is preliminary, but we really have concerns about developers that want to go ahead and change the zoning. They're not asking for changes to better the traffic flow or environment or preserve the habitat and wetlands, rather than to maximize the property with multifamily dwelling when the zoning is for single-family dwelling. We're asking the board to take a good look at this particular project in comparison to the overall projections of other projects on the short strip of Route 9D. There are 22 plus acres on vacant land that right now are being surveyed for homes. And when we asked the surveyor how many homes that they thought they were going to put on that property, they turned around and said, as many as we can cram in to the 5.2 acres. And this is what we're feeling is happening here with this particular property that Mr. Tremblay owns also. There's a potential 30 to 40,000 square foot office building. And we also must take into consideration, this is where our emergency vehicles are parked. So we are asking the planning board not to grant a request to change this to zoning RM for 2 buildings and 25 units. It will have a great impact on the quality of life of everyone, the traffic flow, and potential other projects in this area. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments. And just for your reference, it's the town board that has to approve the zoning change.
Okay, thank you.
There's Linda Mack, I believe, was trying to speak last time?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you very much. Okay. Linda Mack, have lived at 206 Over Rocker Road, diagonally across from the street from this project. I've lived here since 1971. New York State SECRA says when a local government makes decisions, they should not approve anything that will have significant and adverse environmental impacts. This project will definitely do that, namely air pollution, significant light and noise impacts, and dangerous traffic flow onto our street. 8 variances in a special use permit were allowed to accommodate this business, which requires 2 acres of land on a plot that is only 0.8 acres, less than 1 acre. And that 0.8 acre includes knocking down that residential building that has been there probably almost 100 years, and I guess it's over 100 years, which was the only buffer we had from Route 44. Your zoning code states also that no gas station should be built within 500 feet of a residential area. 25 homes are within this area. A petition was signed by the homeowners objecting, and it was ignored. Zoning code also says no gas station should be built within 2,500 feet of another. There is another gas station right across the street, about 60 feet away, I think, from this gas station project. How can you grandfather this business onto this lot? The prior business is not even remotely close to the proposed new one. I was very naive during the last process. The decision the zoning board approved was obviously predetermined from the start with Tancredi and Neil Wilson. You have a new administrator now and a new planning board department. Please, no more charades. I plead to your sense of decency. SECRA has to be redone properly, legally, and ethically. This time around, do the right thing. And besides, the town of Poughkeepsie and its administrators could be held personally and legally liable if any resident in this area is harmed because of the total disregard of the adverse effects this facility will have on the surrounding environment, namely our front, side, and backyards. I mean, I'm just flabbergasted. I've learned a lot, and please, I'm pleading with you, would any of you want this to be done? It is way too big for this lot, and you should do the right thing. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. Anyone else?
Ally Bopp and Keith
Oh.
Hanford has raised a hand, so let's get Ally Bopp.
My name is Amy Hobson Aguirre, and I live at 208 Over Rocker Road. And this is regarding the Malabar Realty gas station proposal as well. That would be adjacent to my property right across the street. So I also have concerns about possible pollution, environmental problems, the noise from the gas station, bright lights, increased traffic flow. And I have 2 children. And so I think my concerns are legitimate and valid. So I'm just really, really hoping that this doesn't go through. So I just wanted to share my concerns. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Amy.
Linda Wright raised her hand. Linda, if you want to unmute yourself, or you would like me to do it? Oh, there you go.
Oh, Linda, okay.
Yes.
We can hear
Hi,
you now.
I'm Linda Wright. I live right next door to this, where they're going to be putting it up. I don't want a gas station next to my house. The lot is too small for all they're asking for. The plan does not provide the landscaped buffers that the codes say I'm supposed to be given, and I want them. There's going to be a lot of bright lights, noise, smell of gas, a lot more traffic, litter from people. There's going to be a lot more people in the area, and it's going to be in my back door. And they're not doing any landscaping buffers like they're supposed to. And I'm afraid of a possible gasoline and oil spillage. What's going to happen at that point? I live next door. It's going to cause problems. The town has a state that has, the town law states that a gas station can't be built within 500 feet of my house. There's already one within that boundary. I don't understand how you can break a law, a town law, by building a gas station on a lot where it can't be built. It's just unbelievable that this can go through, that they would even think of doing this. This is a very nice neighborhood, very quiet, and I don't want bright lights in my house from the gas station. It should be 500 feet from me, not right next door.
What was your address, Linda?
On 217 Over Rocker.
217, okay.
It's right next door to the location. When they take that house out of there, I'm going to see and hear Route 44, all the traffic, all the noise. And right now, that's a buffer. And it's a nice, quiet area, and it's a nice neighborhood. And we'd like to keep it that way.
All right, thanks for your
So
comments.
please stop the project.
Anyone
Thank
else?
you.
Yep, there's Ally Bopp.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I live at 2821 Route 9D. This is my first time coming to one of these meetings. I think we skipped over, I was trying to listen along, but I think we skipped over the Delaverne Avenue subdivision in the South Hills Commons.
No, we're accepting comments on all those plans tonight, so.
We are talking about those?
Yes, anything that's on the agenda that was passed.
Okay,
public
yeah.
hearings.
But I'm pretty sure it was number 2 and 3. I think we skipped over it and we went to Eastdale. Tack on to what Barbara said. I have a lot of concerns about it, and you know, I think it's going to affect us greatly and negatively. And if I'm glad to hear if we're going to talk about it. Is that going to be coming up after? I know we're talking about.
Yeah, we spoke about the public hearings first, and right now we're in an open public comment period, and then we'll begin section that starts with C1.
Okay, awesome. I also want to show solidarity to the people on Over Rocker because I think that is ridiculous as well.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thanks, Sally. Any additional comments from anyone?
I'm not seeing any hands raised or anyone trying to unmute, so.
All right, not seeing anyone else wishing to speak tonight. I move we resume the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded, called to question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right. Next up is the Arlington Farms Malabar Realty. It's on for seeker declaration of lead agency intent. Who is on the call that's representing this applicant?
Karen Hagstrom from Stanger, Roberts, Davis, and Diamond. And also on the call are the architect, Michael Berta, and the engineer, Bradley Cleverly.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Do you have any thing to present?
Well, I just want to mention that this was a previously approved project from 2015. There was a special use permit that was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is now under the aegis of the Planning Board. And there was also the variances were granted by the ZBA that have been discussed. We would volunteer, I would imagine, to do a traffic study for any adjusted traffic since the approval in October of 2015. The site plan approval too, I know on the agenda says it expired, but it was renewed continuously by this board, which has been extended through August 20th through your next meeting. So it never expired, so that's incorrect. We've reapplied for site plan approval just as a belt and suspenders approach. So I also just wanted to mention, which was in our submission, but that since this was previously approved and this is just a reapplication, given extensive litigation which was lost, that this board is bound by the previous determinations of the ZBA and the planning board unless there's demonstrated some type of change in circumstances. The only change in circumstances were the lots were merged, which was requested, and also there was tank remediation, which was done. My client just also wanted me to mention that the property is fully fenced.
All right, thanks. Let's go to Eric then for recommendations from the town.
Sure. This is a new application to the planning board for site plan and special use permit, which are now both, the special use permit is now under the jurisdiction of the planning board through unrelated code changes by the town board a couple of years back. So with this new application, staff are recommending that the board declare its intent to be lead agency and authorize staff to circulate it. And then it was circulated for review, and some comments were received, and we've listed those for the applicant's response with the next submittal.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Don, do you have any comments at this time?
Our comments are pretty much the same as they were last time. We just incorporated one comment from the DOT about possibly undermining the road with excavation, and that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Let's go around the board for comments. Start with Peter.
Not at this time.
Ben?
Nothing, thank you.
Nicole?
Not at this time.
Bob?
No, nothing right now from me.
And Joan?
Just a question. I know with the Stewart Shop, it was looked into whether the surrounding neighborhood was municipal water or wells. Do we know what the surrounding neighborhood water supply is at this parcel?
Good question. Yeah, do you know, Don?
There's townwide water that runs up that road, so I'm not sure whether they are connected.
We have town water.
Okay.
We have town water and septic systems. And if I could just make a rebuttal to Ms. Hagstrom's comment.
Mr.
in
Graves,
regard
I
to the
apologize.
merging of the lots.
Mr. Graves, I apologize. This is not a public hearing at the moment. It will be on for public hearing at some time in the future, but this is not a public comment period.
We just want, okay, thanks for answering the question about the well, but we'll have to make sure we investigate that everybody is
Yeah, that was my
on
only
public
concern
water
at
or
this
not.
point. All right, thank you.
And I guess I don't have any big comments right now myself. Thanks to all the neighbors who commented tonight. We'll have to look into the plan again. And we're ready to move forward with lead agency.
I move that the planning board declare its intent to be the seeker lead agency to coordinate the environmental review of the proposed project of unlisted action and authorize the planning department circulation of a notice of intent, a copy of the EAF, and a copy of the application to all involved and interested agencies.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call to question by roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 6-0.
I move that the planning board defer action on this application pending the establishment of lead agency and direct the applicant to respond in writing to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, included but not limited to the following 1 through 13.
Second.
Moved and seconded to defer. Call to question by roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
And Joan?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion passes 6-0. All right. Next up on the agenda is De La Verne Avenue subdivision. New pre-application discussion on De La Verne Avenue. Who's representing this project?
Amy Bombadiri from Jane's Decosa.
Oh, Amy, can you speak up? Can barely hear you.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better. Still not loud, so.
And we do see your screen, so that's
Okay,
good.
now you're sharing the plan, yep.
So I just want to clarify that this project and the South Hills project are two different projects. It sounded like the comments made it seem like they were combined. They're not.
Yeah, this
Totally
is,
separate applicants.
yeah, this is up on De La Verne Avenue further west, not right on 9D.
So De La Verne is the proposed subdivision into 6 lots. It's a common road that would be constructed. There's an existing house that is bifurcated by the Village of Wappinger's municipal boundary, but that's one parcel. Well, that's one owner. So that parcel 1 will maintain the house and the driveway as it is, which has access off of De La Verne. And the proposed road will have access also off of De La Verne, which will give access to lots 2 through 6. The density of the parcel is maxed out, so there could be no further subdivision of these parcels.
Is there, this is just on for discussion, so I just had a question on the barn that's with the existing house, that I understand the existing house is to remain, but what's the status of the barn, which is now on Lot 3 there?
That would probably be raised. I'm not sure, though.
Okay. Plenty of time to work out that detail.
Amy?
Yeah.
This is Lisa
Yeah.
Cobb. Is the little sliver that is in the town of Wappinger that's adjacent to the barn, if you were to continue the straight line for Lot 1, is the sliver going to be part of Lot 1, that triangle, or is that going to be part of Lot 3? So if you were showing the
Right there,
town, the
right where
village
your
Wappinger
mouse, yeah,
Forest
right where your
Park.
mouse is.
So that would all be part of Lot 1.
Okay.
Okay,
So Lot 1 basically goes like this then.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Keeps the town-village line fairly straightforward then. That's a good question, Lisa, thanks. Anything, Kristen, to discuss? This is your project for recommendations?
Yeah, hi Amy, thank you for the overview. So I just have two updates based on the recommendation that was provided to the board, and they weren't documented here. So one would be that I did have a discussion with the highway superintendent, who on the surface, and of course this will be reviewed by his department again, but on the surface preliminarily, he is okay with the proposed roadway and taking that over because it would be proposed as being deeded over to the town. You know, we would be paying attention to some site distances and things of that nature. So there's that. And then the second item would just be that in speaking with Lisa, our counsel for the planning board, we actually know that this application will have to also appear before the planning board for the village of Wappingers Falls, which the applicant is aware of. So that'll just become a part of this process. But I do think that we would be circulating for lead agency intent at a future meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. All right, let me just go around the board for comments. This is just on for discussion, to get everybody's feeling for what they feel about the plan. Start with Joan this time.
I don't really have that much. I think I don't see any major issues from my perspective. It looks like the lot sizes are going to be big enough to support houses on them in conformity with the zoning requirements. I don't have any comments at this time.
All right, thanks, Joan. I mean, that is a good question. Are all the lots, is there any variances planned for any lot sizes?
No, all the lot sizes are in excess of 20,000 square feet, which is, it's an R20 zoning district, so.
Yeah,
they all have
Amy,
the proper amount of frontage.
we know as a part of a future submittal, we would be looking for you to identify a building envelope just to get a sense of if there would be setbacks or, variances from setbacks and whatnot required. So, and again, that's just for the board's education. We would expect to see that information in a future submittal. This is just
Okay.
preliminarily to get a sense of what the layout would be in terms of parcel size and shape.
Okay.
We didn't
Thanks.
hear from
And just,
John.
And I was about
just-
to, I was just about to
Yeah.
jump into, you finished, Joan?
Well, I just wanted to confirm, I think I read it, it's going to be municipal sewer and water?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my next question to.
Yeah, it gives a little more flexibility with the placement of the house, so.
True. So I'll go to Don now. Question about sewer and other comments.
Amy, I'm just assuming you're talking to the village about that because that's the direction it goes.
I missed the end of that. That's we know we have to submit to the village for their review.
I meant for.
And then you'll, go ahead.
I think Don was asking.
I just want to make sure you were talking to the village about how we could reconcile, the fact that you'd be going directly into their sewer system as opposed to going through the towns into tri-municipal.
The village is in Tri-Muni, isn't it, Don?
Yeah, isn't it all the same?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but it's not, when you say all the same, it's the town has an amount of flow that it
That's right.
records. And this will be part of the town's allocation, but it will be flowing directly through the village of Wappinger, so we're going to need to figure out a way to reconcile that.
Okay.
Okay, good point. Anything else, Don?
No.
All right, thanks. Bob, do you have anything?
Gotta get unmuted here. So the residents that are planned for this are all single family?
Amy? You,
Yes.
Yes, they are all single family.
And there'll be a total of how many? 5?
There's one existing, there'll be
Right.
5 additional.
Total of 6, okay. And these are, I mean, what's the expected increase in, can't be too many, like attending schools, I don't know who's gonna be in these things, but in traffic, it wouldn't seem like that's gonna overload anything. I mean, De La Verne's kind of, it's a 2-lane road, so things tend to get backed up there at times, but is there any analysis been done from a traffic standpoint as to what potential effect, if any, might be a result of this?
There has not been, this is just our first submission, our pre-submission, but the addition of 5 single-family residences would have a negligible impact on traffic. However, as part of the EAF process, we will look at that.
Okay,
all right, thanks, Bob.
thank you. That's all I have.
It reminds me also to, to take a look at, with the new road site distance. I know, it sounds like Mark looked at it already, but it's a curvy, hilly road, so maybe it's okay in that section, but make sure that's covered.
That is coming.
Nicole, anything?
This is such a beautiful house and property. Oh my goodness. Whoever ends up putting houses up onto one of these lots is going to be very happy. I just want to reiterate what the water department said about having to extend that main from De La Verne up to that new street that you're going to be putting in. And that was pretty much it.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Ben?
The only question I have is on that cul-de-sac. Looks kind of small. They're gonna be able to like get garbage trucks or emergency vehicles or anything in and out of there?
Well, we have to design it to town specs, so it would be designed to accommodate emergency and refuse vehicles.
Okay.
That's good,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Good question, Ben. Were you?
It's actually,
Go ahead.
it's a regulation-sized cul-de-sac. It may just look small. The lots are small, I don't.
It just
be a
appears.
perception thing.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Peter,
Just
anything?
appears that way.
Oops, sorry. Is that it, Ben?
That's it.
Anything, Peter?
Just a question for the board attorney. And that is, Lot 1 has 0 sight distance. 0. They even have a mirror across the street as a precaution for oncoming traffic. Would that fall under like a pre-existing non-conforming situation?
I would think that as long as no changes are being proposed to their entranceway, it would, because
Okay.
that lot is just being carved off, but we will certainly look at it.
Good. And I see they shifted the new road as far west on that property as they possibly could, and I still have the same question. I want Don or someone in the future to look at this about the sight distance, because that is a hill and it's right on a curve. And I can tell you that people on De La Verne Avenue don't spare the horses. So I wanted to take a good look at that.
Yep. Yep, that's a good point. All right, thanks everyone for your comments. And we can move forward, Amy.
Thank you.
All right, we've been going about 2.5 hours. I think we're going to take a 3-minute break here.
All right, Amy, if you wouldn't mind unsharing your screen for the moment. Thank you. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
You want to go out? Come on, good girl. No, it's fine. Go out.
Nicole, can you hear me better now?
Yep.
Okay.